What you're about to hear sounds like something from a horror movie, but it's completely true. Every summer, my friends and I go camping in a new place. It's a tradition we've had for years. One year, we chose a hiking trail in West Glacier, Montana. My friend Luke is a photographer, so he always brought his camera gear with him to take lots of nature photos. The first day we were there, we did a lot of hiking and exploring. Luke took a lot of great photos. The first night, everything was normal. We had 2 tents. I was alone in my tent while the other 2 shared theirs. The next day, we went fishing in a nearby river, among other activities. But that second night is when things got weird. We just put out the fire and went back to our tents. We hadn't slept yet when we started hearing sounds from outside the woods. It was clearly a person's voice, an old woman's voice. The voice got louder and clearer every 10 seconds or so. I called out to my friend's tent, asking if they heard it, and they called back and said yes. Someone was out there. The voice was so close and clear that we could hear her say, "Hello." I was shivering in my tent. You might think we were crocodiles for not helping an old woman, possibly trapped in the woods. But that didn't seem right. I heard footsteps approaching my tent, then stopping. The voice said hello again, but this time it didn't sound like a woman's voice. It sounded like a man trying to sound like a woman. His voice was higher. The person standing outside my tent suddenly started shaking the tent aggressively. I panicked and yelled, "What do you want?" My friend yelled, "Go away!" Then the shaking stopped as suddenly as it had started, and I heard footsteps running away. I unzipped the tent and grabbed my sleeping bag to go to my friend's tent. Even in the short 5 seconds outside, I felt like I was about to be caught at any moment. I felt safer in the tent with them and no longer alone. None of us knew what to do, but we all agreed that the voice didn't sound like a woman. It sounded like a creepy guy pretending to be a woman to catch us off guard. The question was, why? Was he armed? We didn't think it was safe to leave now, so we agreed to leave as soon as the sun started to rise. We split up to keep watch. My friend Matt took the first shift while Luke and I tried to sleep. It was hard to sleep after what had just happened, especially since we kept thinking we heard footsteps around the tent. However, I eventually fell asleep from exhaustion. I never woke up until the morning because Luke had apparently fallen asleep during his shift, and by then we were all asleep. We were glad the sun was up, so we packed up and headed back to the car. Throughout the trip, Luke had been going through his camera, reviewing the photos he had taken over the 2 days. However, the last 3 photos were not his. There were 2 photos of our campsite when it was still dark. The 3rd photo was taken inside our tent, while all 3 of us were asleep. Nothing was lost or stolen, and none of us were attacked. Still, it was the most terrifying thing that had ever happened to any of us. Some random stalker in the woods, stalking our tent, waiting for the right moment to enter the campsite, rummaging through our belongings and taking pictures of us sleeping. Whoever it was, they definitely achieved their goal of scaring us. Last July, my friend Miranda threw a graduation pool party in her backyard. With her parents away, it was the perfect spot for a last-minute summer party before college. Little did we know, the night would turn into our worst nightmare. The party started out just like any other party. Miranda invited close to 100 people, but word spread quickly, and soon there were about 150 guests, many of whom we didn't recognize. Miranda, already annoyed by the unfamiliar faces, sent a message to our class chat group asking everyone not to bring any more strangers. Things calmed down a bit after that. At around 1 a.m., the police showed up due to noise complaints. The music was turned off and most of the guests had left, leaving only a handful of people behind to clean up. By 3 a.m., only a few of our close friends were left. It was hot outside, so we moved into the air-conditioned living room to continue our evening. Then we heard a distinct crack from upstairs. We all froze, eyes wide, half laughing, half scared. Miranda, clearly panicked, asked us to go check it out. Jonah and I went upstairs to check. We found our friend Steve, drunk and asleep in the living room, but we still had no idea where the noise was coming from. Miranda and her friend Mel eventually went into her room. Jonah fell asleep on the couch, and I slept in her parents' bed. Neither of us could drive. I woke up to screaming from the next room. It was Miranda and Mel. At first I thought they were joking, but the screaming was really scary. I ran to Miranda's room and found them huddled in the corner, scared. And then I saw him. a tall figure standing in the opposite corner of the room, staring at me. I yelled for the girls to run, and they did. The house was in chaos. Even Steve woke up as we all ran downstairs. We called the police and waited at the neighbor's house. We never saw the man leave through the front door, and when the police searched the house, they found nothing. He must have escaped through the back door. We never found out who he was or what he wanted. Maybe he was someone Miranda knew and thought she would be alone. It's scary to think what might have happened if we hadn't stayed with her. We'll never know if we could have restrained him, but we didn't risk it. It was a scary night, and it will haunt us forever. You never know what's lurking in the dark. There is a nice, quiet creek not far from my house. I like to kayak up there on weekends during the summer. Today was a weekend, and the weather was perfect. I have kayaked down this creek many times and have never seen anyone else, which is part of why I like it. I am a very private person and like privacy. So I got in my kayak not far from where I parked my car. There was another car that pulled up a few minutes after me, which was unusual. I have never seen any other cars here except mine. About 20 minutes into my kayaking, I saw someone come out of the woods ahead of me on the left. He came up to the water's edge, stopped, and waved at me with a smile. I immediately felt uncomfortable, and I didn't like his smile. But my mother had taught me to be polite, so I stopped paddling and greeted him back. There was an awkward pause as he just nodded with that tight-lipped smile. I broke the silence by saying, "It's a beautiful day." He nodded again and asked where I was from. I made something up and said I was from up north, just visiting. He clearly lacked social skills, which was saying something. I told him to get some rest and continued down the creek. Then I continued on, but now I felt unsafe. I heard a tree snap not far behind me. In the distance, there was a guy hiding behind some trees, seemingly watching me. I felt confused and uncomfortable. He was clearly trying not to be seen. Scared, I pretended not to notice and continued kayaking. I kept glancing back, and he was still watching me. I tried calling my dad and brother for help, but of course, there was no phone service in that area. Rather than risk being followed and possibly attacked, I decided to stop and threaten to call the police. The man just stood there, hiding behind another tree. I decided to pretend to call the police, holding up my phone and saying, "I see you there. I'm calling them right now." I pretended to talk to the police, and it seemed to work. He started walking into the woods. I kayaked back as fast as I could, constantly looking back. When I got back to where I had started, I checked my surroundings before getting out of the kayak. The other car was still there, but I noticed something disturbing. There was broken glass near the back of my car, and the rear passenger side window was broken. I didn't go near my car. I hid in the woods and called 911, reporting the whole incident and the broken window. Waiting for the police was like the longest, most tense moment of my life. When they arrived, I stepped out of the woods and pointed to my car. The police approached and saw the man hiding in the back seat, waiting to arrest me. It was satisfying to see him arrested. He was definitely not smiling anymore. I was glad he was stupid enough to think I wouldn't notice the broken glass.